in the sun against the stone of buildings built before. You and I were born, and to my ears, confusion rose against the latest episode of Columbia House Party. Jake, what's up?
Not much, man. How are you doing?
I am excellent. I'm very excited for today's episode.
Yeah, me too. This is going to be a fun one.
Jake, today we're discussing an album from one of the best and most pivotal Canadian indie acts of the last 2 decades. It's the 5th of their 9 albums, The Dead Center, and in my eyes, the songwriting peak of a really incredible career. And while we hope this episode finds you well, it would be a perfect one for anyone who has recently called things off. Today, we're discussing Tegan and Sara's The Con.
I won't regret saying this thing that I'm saying. Is it better than keeping my mouth shut? That goes without saying. Call, break it off. Call, break my own heart. Maybe I would have been something you'd be good at. Maybe you would have been something I'd be good at. But now you'll never know. I won't be sad, but in case I'll go there every day to make myself feel bad. There's a chance I'll start to wonder if this was the thing to do. I'll start to wonder if this was the thing to do.
The song is called Call It Off Tegan and Sara's The Con. Apologies for opening with the ending track there. We'll talk about why in a little bit. We're going to talk a lot about everything to do with this album with a guest I'm really excited to have on. We're joined today by Lauren Denitzio. Lauren, how's it going?
Hey, good. How's it going? Happy to be here.
I'm wonderful. I'm really glad we found a time and an album for you to come on. For anyone who doesn't know, Lauren is the lead singer and guitarist of the excellent band Warriors, who on March 5th, as part of Bandcamp Friday, released a covers EP that you can go check out at warriors.bandcamp.com. They also have some great merch. If you happen to follow me on Instagram, you would have seen me in said merch before, the survival pop shirts that I like a lot. Lauren's also an artist and illustrator who you can check out at Lauren_Denitzio on Instagram. And Lauren, you also have a weekly newsletter and subscription service on Substack, getittogether.substack.com, where there are things like zines and 7-inch flexi series. What can you tell us about the Substack and the covers EP and everything else you've been working on lately?
Yeah, well,
Sorry. I'm just going to dump a bunch of stuff on your shoulders to explain
Tell
to
us
us.
about all the things you do.
I'm very
explain
excited.
everything you've ever made.
Yes. What is art?
Well,
Lauren?
Yeah, I have no idea. So yeah, the Substack is actually a newsletter that combines my artwork and things that I enjoy writing about, like music and art and, what Warriors is doing. There's a lot of process stuff, but also just like writing my review of like movies that I like. This is a terrible pitch, but yeah, it's basically it's a newsletter where I really get at kind of building a creative life for yourself, and I interview a bunch of people too, and so I've kind of combined that with it being the newsletter where you can get updates about Warriors stuff also. And the subscription part of it are the paid subscriptions, where if you subscribe annually, you'll get a physical object from me 4 times a year. So right now I'm in the middle of 4 flexi 7 inches of demos from our last record that come with a zine, like an original zine for each 7-inch. So that's that. Paid subscribers, like on a monthly basis, also get like extra videos and covers and things. And but it's free. Every week, get something from me, get updates and discount codes and all sorts of stuff. But it's kind of the closest thing we have to a Patreon.
It's great. And again, that's at getittogether.substack.com and at Warriors Music on social or Bandcamp. And then Lauren's own art at Lauren_Denitzio on Instagram. Before we get into Tegan and Sara, I'm hoping that you can retell a story that I heard you tell on a different interview before. Is that okay?
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Whoa.
All right.
Just in the spirit of Canadianizing the episode
yeah.
even further, you told a story on another interview about the time some Proud Boys accidentally showed up to one of your shows.
What?
Yeah. Yeah,
I knew you'd
it
get a
was
kick out of
real
this, Jake.
weird. Yeah, so we were actually, it was actually in Vancouver. And
Okay.
I forget what bar it was, but it was a very queer show. And, it was definitely a bunch of punks in this bar. And after we had played, I found out that there were a bunch of Proud Boys that had come in. And they didn't know what show it was. Like, it wasn't because it was our show or anything. They were just like, well, fuck it. Like, we'll pay and go to this bar. And I think they pretty quickly realized how unwelcome they were. And everyone was just like,
Good.
You've got to be kidding me. And, just kind of stared them out of the bar. They definitely left, like, because they knew they shouldn't be there, like it was just very awkward.
Not so proud now, huh?
I don't think anybody said anything to them. They could have. The bartender might have said something, but yeah, we were all a little like, what the fuck? And yeah.
That's very, very odd.
Yeah, I hope we haven't cultivated a community where anyone's not aware of this, but for the it's not as bad in Canada people that tweet that stuff like that whenever anything bad and racist is happening in the US, it sure does happen here. I'm sorry that happened, but it's funny that they got the message and just kind of slinked away. The old Abe Simpson grab the hat off the rack and leave.
Yeah, I'm glad that it like that happened instead of it being like old school Nazi punks fuck off, like having to
the green room
have a fight
kind of thing
or something. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, that was fine.
Lauren, you also had another little bit of Canadiana. You participated in that awesome Times Arrow cover with Steve Slakowski, our buddy, and Jeff Rosenstock, and a bunch of other people. I take it you're a big Weaker Thans fan?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. John's
Who
music
isn't,
is
right?
great, and I was psyched that they asked me to sing on that. It's awesome. It was awesome to get to basically do karaoke with your friends.
Okay, we are not talking about the Weaker Thans. We are talking about Tegan and Sara. Jake, I know that for you, Tegan and Sara are a band that you like, but don't have a lot of deep connections with necessarily. But you actually were introduced to Tegan and Sara through another band that you and Lauren have in common as big fans of. So tell us a little bit about that, how you came to Tegan and Sara and what your relationship with the con is.
Yeah, I mean, like, I knew about Tegan and Sara through high school just because of the sort of CanCon angle, obviously, and they're a band that I like, but I just don't have any, like, strong personal connection to, but I had heard the name and kind of whatever, and then got into them because of the Against Me record, New Wave. But yeah, I heard that song, and I love that song, and I was like, wow, I love her voice a lot, and then just sort of got back. I listened back, I guess. That was only 2007, so wasn't as much material as there is now, but really liked it. And then I think Tegan and Sara kind of just, in Canada especially, they're just sort of in sort of the, whatever you want to call it, alternative, emo, whatever scene. They're kind of just like an omnipresent group here. And really liked their sort of turn to more of a pop sound.
Yeah, Love You to Death is like one of the best running and workout albums that there is.
I didn't see it coming, but I was like, yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, you get all the goodness of Tegan and Sara's songwriting, but you get these more up-tempo running beats and stuff. I'm similar to you, Jake. I've been a fan for a long time, and basically, you can't miss them if you're into the Canadian scene and you're tracking things like Polaris and Junos and just generally being around the scene. They're awesome. I love the songwriting so much. I'm really excited for this episode. Lauren, you gave a couple options of episodes you might want to do. Frightened Rabbit was on the table. Why Tegan and Sara the con for you? Why was this one of the ones you wanted to do with us?
I was looking at the kind of era that y'all were covering, and I feel like I'm actually, like, if I'm honest, I'm like not a huge fan of a lot of emo and or like a lot of like bigger pop punk from like the early aughts or something that I feel like a lot of my friends are like were formative records for them. I'm just kind of like, I don't know. And I feel like Tegan and Sara were this weird crossover to me that, they were two women playing acoustic guitars and somehow they were also an emo band. And and I really love this record. So it's like looking at that time frame, I legit love this record. And I feel like this was like the emo punk record of that time for me.
Awesome. We're going to get into a lot of the details of the con as well as some of our favorite Tegan and Sara songs not on the con after this. All right, so quick background. Twin sisters from Calgary who began playing guitar and writing at the age of 15. They were originally called Plunk. They won a competition for their first professional demo and then became Sara and Tegan. They got to open for Hayden in Calgary, which would have been a show. Then they changed their name to Tegan and Sara and released Under Feet Like Ours independently. They were then signed by Neil Young's Vapor Records, which is very cool. They released The Business of Art and If It Was You. In 2004, they had their bigger local and international breakthrough with So Jealous, which was released on Vapor and Sanctuary. They kind of got some extra buzz because the White Stripes covered Walking with a Ghost. So that's maybe the most notable from that era. But their standout to me and to Lauren, I was glad we agreed on this, is You Wouldn't Like Me. Lauren, was that your introduction to Tegan and Sara, or had you kind of been a fan of theirs prior to that track and the So Jealous album?
That was definitely my introduction to them. I feel like that was the track that was available on Napster. That I remember it being on my computer in college and like that, the MP3, and it wasn't even the whole record. I think I have like 3 Tegan and Sara songs back then or something. But You Wouldn't Like Me was the one.
This, for anyone who doesn't know or just wants to go back and listen to it, this is You Wouldn't Like Me.
There's a war inside of me. Do I cause a new heartbreak to write a new broken song? Do I push it down or let it run me right into the wind? I feel like I wouldn't like me if I met me. And don't you worry, there's still time.
Another band I really like called The Beths has a song called You Wouldn't Like Me. And it's not a cover of that song, but I feel like it's meant as kind of a spiritual hat tip to that song. Hopefully I'll get to ask them about it one day. Jake, you hadn't come to Tegan and Sara until the con, right? So the earlier stuff missed you a little bit because you're so young, Jake.
I know. I'm such a baby at
32
years old.
It matters a lot because for a lot of the albums we do, you get to say I was in high school and I have to say I was in college.
That's true. I guess the con would have been the most recent of theirs that came out. I don't remember really the order of when I got into it, but yeah, I came into them around 2007 as well, because that's when that Against Me record came out. And then went back a little bit, but The Con is definitely the one that was like, oh, okay, this is like the Tegan and Sara record of the moment, so to speak.
Yes. And it's the most Columbia House Party of the albums, because coming off of So Jealous, they stayed with Neil Young's Vapor in Canada, but they moved from Sanctuary to Sire in the US. And for this album, they ratcheted up the production side. They called on Columbia House Party Hall of Famer Chris Walla to produce this one. They also had performances on the album from members of Death Cab, Weezer, AFI, and a few other places. Despite that, the video documentary from this time shows that it was still a pretty DIY album. They still had a lot of control over it, but the creative process was pretty stressful. The sisters have talked about this straining their relationship a little bit, but eventually they got there. July 24th, 2007, The Con was released. You know, it's certainly a dark turn and a dark album. As they were going through the writing process, Tegan was going through the end of a long-term relationship. Sara was separated from her American girlfriend who couldn't get a working visa. Their grandmother had just passed. So as Tegan told Metro Weekly, it's very dark and also very much about reflecting on getting older, long-term relationships, and the end of things. And what I find, immediately interesting about the album is, and I guess Tegan and Sara's process in general, is that there is a consistent kind of dark tone to this. And while the sound of the songs changes a little bit, obviously, I do feel like that theme is pretty consistent, even though Tegan and Sara were going through different things. They each wrote 7 songs on this album, and it's not an A-side, B-side. So the fact that it stitches together kind of really cohesively is a testament to, I guess, just how well they work together. So the second thing that stands out to me on this album is that it very much feels like a breakup album. And they open the song with an album, I guess, about marriage. This is I Was Married.
I'm married in the sun. Tell me where. Against the stone of buildings built before. You and I were both. Start again. Until my heart confusion grows against. The muscles fought so long. To control against the pull of one magnet to another magnet to another magnet. Now we look up and tell me who into the eyes of police breaking backs. That seems so very tough. It's a lie. That seems so very scared of us. I look into the mirror, for evil that just does not exist. I don't see what they see. Tell them that. Try to control the pull of one magnet to another magnet to another magnet to another magnet to another.
Jake, it occurs to me now that I missed, with the opening lyric intro, I should have had you do the sing back part.
You should have. That is a missed opportunity. You're right.
Unbelievable.
I'll never forgive you.
Sorry, buddy. Lauren, I know the kind of theme of the album was something that you wanted to talk about. In addition to this being a breakup album, what do you think of the kind of starting this off, given where the album goes from here?
So yeah, it's like the whole record sounds like a breakup record. Like even if it's not directly like sounding like a breakup song specifically, everything is about the end of things or missing someone or being in pain and sounding like you're in pain. And but then the whole record starts with this song that's like a dream about getting married. It's not actually about getting married. Like it sounds like an aspirational daydream kind of thing that I think, I mean, I went back and read the lyrics recently, and it occurred to me. I was like, oh, I think this is about, telling homophobes to fuck off. Or like, not understanding like why it was so terrible that they would want to get married. But it's not a breakup song. It's not it doesn't sound like an especially sad song. But then the rest of the record is just like, oh, this is a breakup record. And then also that it ends with Call It Off, which is probably the least angsty song on the record. It's clearly very like nostalgically sad, but it's not like wishing that they were going to get back together. It's just like, well, this is it. Okay. Like, this is sad.
Yeah,
All right.
the kind of shrugged shoulders lyric of maybe you would have been something I'd be good at. It's maybe. But I wanted to ask a little bit more in your rereading of the lyrics and as you said, telling homophobes to fuck off. How important or meaningful was it, if it was at all, for Tegan and Sara to, from the outset in their career, be open about being queer and having that be a part of their songwriting? Was that meaningful for you as you found them and became a fan?
I mean, maybe. I feel like I was already listening to a lot of music by openly queer people, not necessarily in the indie and punk world, but it wasn't like a huge novelty to me that they were openly gay. But it was cool. I was certainly like, oh, that's rad. They can do that. Like, maybe I can do that. And and I do remember, I don't think I've seen them since this, but I think they were on tour for the con, and I saw them at Terminal 5 in New York, which is gigantic.
Sweet. Yeah, I love that venue.
And I just remember it was just like, 90% queer women. And it was great. I loved it. It's like, I love that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I want to say, because I really do believe that if it's good to be able to see yourself on stage. And that's something that's really important to me. I think it would have been odd if they weren't, because, a lot of their music was about relationships. But yeah, I sometimes wonder if certain acts get pigeonholed too much,
Right.
And I'm sure that's something that they have thought about a lot. But I certainly appreciated it, like they were great. Or they are great.
In reading their response to kind of how the con was received, it sounds like, going back to it, that more than that, they had to sort through a bunch of commentary that didn't want to take female songwriters seriously, or like the same level of seriousness as their male counterparts.
100%.
Like, they were 27 at the time that they wrote the con, and some of including the Pitchfork review, obviously, just like you would think reading it that they were like teenagers, the way that people just seemed shocked that 27-year-old women could write good music. It's
stupid.
Yeah, that seemed to be more their issue than
that's true.
pigeonholing based on being queer. Yeah. So this is a pretty good breakup album, and it gets there pretty quickly after I Was Married. Knife Going In is a personal favorite of mine, and kind of, I think, one of the best examples of their songwriting and their vocal talent. But really, you get to this kind of meaty, emotional middle when you go Back in Your Head, Hop a Plane, and Soil Soil. Back in Your Head, probably the most radio ready of the songs here, and it was, not surprisingly then, their first single to chart. It charted on the Canadian rock charts. It's also, it's just a very good track, so it's not that surprising that it was a breakthrough track for them. This is Back in Your Head.
Build a wall of books between us in our bed. Repeat the words that I know we both said. Relax into the need, we get so comfortable. Remember when I was so
that opening beat there misleads you to where that song's going. Jake, I'll ask you first. Just that kind of theme of like just the way they say it, wanting back in someone's head, and that part of the breakup process of like, I guess, hoping that they're still thinking of you. Is that relatable for you at all, Jake? I know you're happily a wife guy now, but
yeah, yeah, of course. And I think one of the great things about their songwriting that I think has sort of continued through all the various, let's call it, phases of their sound is that I think they're very good at sort of digging into that. I don't want to say simplistic because I think that sounds sort of dismissive and I don't mean it that way, but I think they're very good at like honing in on these very universal, simple feelings that everyone has in these sort of situations and then turning them into really good pop songs. And I feel like the middle of this record especially really drills in on that, especially this song and the one next.
Yeah, the next one being Hop a Plane, which we're going to talk about in just a second. Lauren, I know that Back in Your Head was one of the ones that you wanted to discuss as well. Why is this song a big one for you?
I mean, it is definitely a hit of the record. And yeah, I feel like this was another one that like if you didn't, I mean, obviously if it charted, like if you didn't really know much about Tegan and Sara before, you probably knew this song. I think it's just a really cute pop song, especially when a lot of the rest of the record is pretty dark or kind of angular. They have a lot of really interesting percussion and rhythm stuff happening in a lot of the other songs. And then this song just opens with this really cute piano line. And yeah, I don't know. I just really like it. It's just one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's also, I think it's the best. Being a big fan of Love You to Death, it's going back to this one. It's like, oh yeah, there was a little bit of that in there already that maybe they could do the synth pop thing in a fun and creative way. So one of the things I mentioned it earlier that, 7 of these songs are written by Tegan and 7 of them are written by Sara. I'm curious if it's one of those things that like you maybe like retcon that you noticed or have a preference. Lauren, when you're going through them, can you like tell a Tegan song from a Sara song or is it just kind of 14 Tegan and Sara songs?
I don't think I can tell. I mean, I can tell. I feel like you can tell the difference between their voices.
Yes.
But I don't, because they harmonize so much, like so much. I don't think of their songs as like a Tegan song versus a Sara song, like you might in other bands that have 2 lead singers. Yeah, no, I don't. It's weird that I don't.
No. I only asked because when we were kind of talking about what songs we might want to talk about, you skewed heavier toward Tegan songs. So I was curious if that was something that you picked up on or were aware of, or it just kind of happened randomly like that. 19 being one of them. I know that's a favorite of yours. I love the felt you in my legs before I met you, feel you in my heart, but I don't even know you. What is, 19 is one of your favorites. I guess we could just talk about it as a track on its own.
Yeah. 19 is heartbreaking, but so beautiful and relatable. Like, I think, especially knowing that they wrote this record when they were in their like mid-20s, like reflecting on who you were as a 19-year-old, like falling for someone you basically don't really know that well, but you're just like all about them very quickly and channeling that emotion still, like still channeling that like hurt and longing for someone, this gigantic crush is pretty interesting. Or it's just a very compelling song. It's just a beautiful song.
For sure. And that's the thing about those romances at 19 is the quicker and more dramatically you fall like that, the bigger the heartbreak coming out of it, right?
Oh, yeah.
You feel harder on both ends of things. Shortly before, I mentioned kind of that emotional apex in the middle of the album with Hop a Plane and Soil. This is Hop a Plane.
I I took the train back to where I came from. I took it all alone, it's been so long, I know. Imagine me, there my heart asleep with no air. Begging ocean, please help me drown these memories. All I need to hear is that you're not mine, you're not mine. I'm a recess somewhere far away from the sight of my hands, the sight of me not moving. You can't just hop a plane and come and visit me again. I claim it's in my head and I regret offering. All I want to hear is that you're not mine, you're not mine. All I want to hear is that you're not mine, you're not mine. All I need to hear is that you're not mine, you're not mine. All I want to hear is that you're not mine, you're not mine.
So again, just a killer tune. But Lauren, another favorite of yours.
Oh yeah, definitely. I feel like this has ended up on a million playlists, and really just for myself. No mixtapes. This is not a mixtape song. This song actually made me rereading the lyrics made me realize how much like, and I say this with love. I have no idea what some of their songs are about. What a lot of their songs are about. Like if you read the lyrics, I feel like a lot of them are so personal. Like maybe like the verses will be like so personal and nuanced. I'm like, what are you talking about? But it like I don't need to know because the songwriting is so good that you just like get that emotion from it. Like all I need to hear is that you're not mine. Like that's antithetical to what you think that song sounds like, you know? Like,
Right.
That song sounds like you're trying to get somebody back and like they're far away and you want them to come visit you. But it sounds like that song is about, please tell me we're not together anymore. You're not mine and I can get over you.
Right. And that's where, you know, I took the train back to where I came from. I took it all alone as an opening lyric. It's like, you know, it's tough. It sounds like they're asking for that rather than describing what happened. It's just, you know, release me from this kind of thing. But yeah, it's funny. Even the Genius annotation says it's about a confusing relationship. And I think that they have that Genius annotation there like that because even the people who are hardcore enough to do Genius annotations don't really know what's going on in that one.
I love Genius annotations so much.
Yeah.
Early 20s, Jake would have been like on the leaderboard for Genius annotations.
I don't know. Like a lot of Genius annotations, there's like, it's a song that's very clearly about something. Like this is a song about a breakup. And it's like, yeah. Or like, I love ones like this.
Good with Genius.
Yeah.
The singer is saying the singer is saying they're sad. And the line and the lyric is always like, I'm so sad. It's like, yes, you nailed it. Genius. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. But I still do feel like you would have been on there, but you would have been the annotator downvoting and being like, well, actually, it's about this.
Yeah. You're making me sound very great and normal.
I know, old you, Jake.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I feel like old me would have been like too pretentious and shitty for Genius.
Maybe
I would have found like the offshoot that no one heard of and been like, this is what it really is.
Right. So I guess kind of to get back to the close of the album, obviously Call It Off is just a killer album closer. We talked about it a little earlier on and played it off the top. That too is a Tegan song, and not to overfocus on hers, but in Sarah's own estimation, as she told NPR, in kind of reflecting on this being one of, you know, a pretty big accomplishment for them. She said, there's a sophistication to it that I didn't realize existed when I was 27. There's no payoff to my songs. They're all tension. It's uncomfortable. And I wonder if that's where, you know, the pairing here really works, because Tegan's songs have a little bit more of that either payoff or a little bit of the optimism left. One thing I wanted to ask both of you about, since I know you're both big fans of Against Me, or Lauren, in your case, you've worked with Laura Jane before. Tegan and Sara have said that this album is heavily influenced by Against Me as the Eternal Cowboy. Lauren, I guess you've worked with Laura Jane and being a fan of both. Do you feel that in here? Do you hear that in The Con?
I'm sitting here being like, I don't hear that. Or I guess, but that's a good thing, because I think if they wrote a record that I was like, they've been listening to a lot of Against Me, like that wouldn't be good. Like but I mean, I think you can definitely hear them getting to be like a louder punk band, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like even with Hop a Plane, and their guitars are just totally fuzzed out on that. And they have some really good choruses. So I understand, like, I can see how that would be the case. I don't think it's like an obvious, oh, this is their Against Me influenced record, but that's cool that, you know, even kind of before Tegan sang on that record, that they were like fans of each other and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. I know this is kind of like a separate podcast of its own, but how did you enjoy working with Laura Jane? I'd imagine that would have been pretty cool. Oh yeah, it was great. I haven't, like, on the 2 records we've done since then, I haven't had a producer who's also a songwriter or like an artist in their own right. Or I shouldn't say that, but like no one was working with me on the songs outside of the band, like specifically as a songwriter, as in the same way, I guess, that Laura was, and I think that was a really interesting experience. Interesting makes it sound like it's bad. Really interesting. No, it was great. It was really great. It was like, I have really nothing but fond memories of that, and you know, Laura's great, and has a really amazing ear. Like, she would just hear things. I was like, what are you talking? Like, just can really pick up on things, and just really helped a lot. It was super collaborative. We had a lot of fun. So yeah, it was just a dream. It was really nice. That sounds amazing. Jake, you're a big Against Me fan. Do you hear that going back to the con at all, or is it the same kind of thing where, like, yeah, they maybe got a little punkier and a little fuzzier, but that's about it?
Yeah, not really either, other than the fact they're a band that also started sort of on the more acoustic side of things and then brought that into a more rocky, punky sound or whatever. But I do sort of hear, if not like a direct, and like, when I heard this album in 2007, after hearing Tegan on the Against Me song, I wasn't like, oh, I see now. But it's sort of, to me, and like, maybe this is totally off base, but to me, they sort of, I sort of understand what they mean. Like, I can see how, I'm trying to way to phrase this. I can see how, if they were listening to a lot of that record while making this record, I kind of get it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. We're going to talk about how the con was received, and we're going to pick some of our favorite songs off of it after this. Okay, so the con did well. It hit number 4 in Canada and number 34 in the US. It eventually became their second of 4 gold albums, got longlisted for the Polaris Prize here, and got a Juno nomination. It's been pretty well received critically. It has 80 on Metacritic and 92 on Absolute Punk. The Observer's Sarah Bowden gave it a 5 out of 5, writing, "When your heart feels like a stone in your breast, the con will prove a perfect, sweetly addictive companion," which is nice. But there was also the usual bullshit, as we kind of talked about earlier. The Pitchfork review was dumb. As Sara told NPR, "I've gone back and read the press. It's unreal. So shocking. Men have written their best things in their teen years or their 20s. Prolific artists like Kurt Cobain or Hendrix. We were not babies. We were 27 years old. We had lived a lot of life. Because we were women, it was so hard to take what we were doing seriously. we got more popular, but we didn't get the respect. Tegan felt differently. In the same interview to NPR, said the con was when I felt so validated. Sara and I were in different places. It was such a transcendent moment in my life. We made it. We turned that corner. There were thousands of people singing along. So a little bit of contrast there between how each of them dealt with the, success versus some of what was being written. Lauren, I know that you're kind of fascinated by, like you said earlier, just how big they got in the indie scene as a rock band with, dual lead singers and acoustic guitars and kind of this emo sound. I guess, can you offer any reflection at all on what Tegan and Sara are saying there about, this kind of success versus respect? And obviously, we kind of eye rolled earlier at, of course, some of the music critics weren't willing to give them full credit for the songwriting or act surprised at it because they were women. I guess just your kind of wrap up thoughts on the con and how it might have been received at the time.
It makes a lot of sense to me that they felt like it was a transcendent moment for them, not just in how it was received, but like how the record turned out. And it feels like a big achievement for a band to put together a record like this. And so like to not get the respect critically that you feel like your peers are getting for similar or lesser works. Or I shouldn't say lesser, but just like, things that maybe aren't as ambitious is awful and disappointing, but also at the same time, not unexpected. Like, I'm sure they could see that coming. But I mean, I think at the time I like just graduated college, like not too long before this record came out. And yeah, I feel it was huge. Like, I feel like they played Webster Hall and I saw like that they were in a tour bus. And I was just like, fuck yeah. Like they played some big venue and I knew that it was their bus. I was like, that rules. Because yeah, it's like, in my head at that point, I just considered them a punk band with acoustic guitars. I was like, what? Like that didn't, I didn't know people who did that or like who got as big as they were. So yeah, I don't know. I just think it's a really significant record for them, but also like when I listened to it, like at the age I was at when it came out, I feel like it was a really big deal.
Yeah. And obviously, big here in Canada too. The Polaris and Juno noms and all that. They followed it up with Sainthood, which was nearly as successful, and then Heartthrob, which is actually their highest charting album to date. It hit number 2 in Canada. And then, as I noted off the top, I really enjoyed their more synth pop turn with Love You to Death in 2016, including this, one of my favorite Tegan and Sara songs, Dying to Know.
Put a little of you into my heart. Took a chance and you tore it apart. I let a little light into the dark. Caused a blackout inside of my heart. See your face makes it hard to move on. Hear your voice can't manage.
their most recent album is a really interesting one. In addition to their memoir, High School, they released the album Hey, I'm Just Like You, which is them revisiting songs that they wrote in their teen years with kind of their current sound and their current perspective. There was also a 10-year anniversary of the Con. They released the Con X with covers from other artists like City and Colour, Hayley Williams, Grimes, Churches. The Churches cover of Call It Off is amazing. But I'm a big Churches fan anyway. They've also done, a lot of other collaboration work, as we mentioned, TV, video games, social and political activism. In kind of wrapping up where they're at right now, around the anniversary of the Con, Sara told Billboard, "It just feels like that community has supported us so much, and it's also, I don't know, it's the only thing that keeps me from turning into a nihilist and thinking an asteroid should hit Earth is to give back to people who are constantly giving." So that's in my eyes, a pretty good perspective to take to fight off the nihilism, as she says. Lauren, we're now at the part of the podcast where we normally kind of pick a couple favorites off the album, and eventually we're going to pick one of these songs to be on our Columbia House Party mixtape or playlist or whatever you want to call it. So I guess first, I'm going to kick it to Jake first because Jake was a little fresher to the album. Did you, going back to it, Jake, any songs stand out as your favorites off the Con?
Yeah, I think Hop a Plane is by far my favorite on the album. I think it's just such a great sort of amalgamation of everything I like about this sort of genre, I guess, to simplify it down to its essence. It's just that mix of sort of the punkier, thoughtful, sort of acoustic rooted songs. I know it's more of an electric tune, but you know what I mean. But I think Back in Your Head and Hop a Plane back to back, I definitely think are a great, I love when there's sort of centerpieces of albums, and I think those two are great centerpieces. I also really like O, Like H, which also has a great cover by Shamir, who rules. But I think those three are probably would be my tops.
Lauren, what about you? I know we talked about it a little bit over email beforehand, but what are your favorite songs on the Con?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with the Hop a Plane pick. That's definitely one of my favorites. As is Back in Your Head. I feel like maybe it's like I'm trying to pick like the not obvious, like the not already a hit one or something, the snob in me. But 19 and Call It Off. Yeah, Call It Off I feel like is the one that I forget about. And then I hear it again like a goldfish. I'm like, this is amazing. Those are my favorites.
Okay, I guess, normally we don't have like a standard choice for the mixtape. It can be our favorite. It can be the one that we think best kind of encapsulates the album or our conversation. I know that you and Jake both have Back in Your Head at number 1. So that's a possible way we could go here. Call It Off thematically is maybe a way we could go. Lauren, you talked about Hop a Plane being on a lot of playlists. Where do you want to go with this? What do you think we should throw on the mixtape?
I would go with Hop a Plane. That's all
right.
To not
no
bum
arguments
out
here.
Your playlist.
There's plenty of bumming out on this playlist. We'll be all right. But Hop a Plane's a good choice. And look, you said it was a heavy playlist and mixtape song, or not mixtape song, but a heavy playlist song for you. So it makes sense. It's obviously a good, fun, versatile playlist piece. So it fits perfectly. I guess my only other question for you, Lauren, was, do you have a favorite Tegan and Sara album that's not the Con? Like, did one of the other 8 stand out to you as, one of the top ones for you, the way Love You to Death is for me?
Oh, I mean, it would be between So Jealous and Sainthood, honestly. I do really like their newer music, but I think it's one of those cases of like the place in your life where you are when you listen to certain records. But yeah, one of those two. I really like Hell off of Sainthood. That was also on a ton of playlists. But yeah.
Nice. Okay, well, with the Hop a Plane is locked onto the mixtape, as long as you don't have an objection, Jake.
Oh, absolutely not.
Good, Jake. Thank you. Lauren, we wanted to thank you for coming on. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And as a reminder for everyone, you can follow Lauren's work with Warriors at Warriors Music on Bandcamp and any of your socials. Check out her art on Instagram at Lauren_Denitzio, and then check out her newsletter at Get It Together on Substack, getittogether.substack.com. Lauren, thank you so much.
Hey, please try the fish.